Oseo.
Oseo.
Wave the great feather. Waishaga waishte. This feather is the instrument for making the good and for realizing the good. Make life an offering, and this feather is the symbol of that offering. My subject today is going to be Ma'at. This is Egypt, spelled M-A-A-T. I'm going to start right off by reading a poem by Coyote, and then I can go on from there. This is the last couple stanzas of a poem that she had written that accompanied the piece I illustrated last week, The Great Eye. I am she who calls hawk, as I twirl and dance with hawk's prayer stick, and you, coyote, watch hawks circle above me as I sing my spirit songs. I earned your final feather from Ma'at, old Egypt's goddess of truth and justice. Together we weigh after light, hearts against Shu'ut, Ma'at's ostrich feather of truth. I learned to weigh each offering brought to you, then courageously set on the scale hummingbirds, fluttering heartbeat already in flight. In Egypt, all of the focus or the determined would be to go through death and get beyond it, to the world beyond, pretty much like that. So it wasn't so much a fixation on death as fixation on, for sure, there was a world beyond death. So that governed everything. Of Ma'at, just nominally figured as truth and justice, is really a life way. Ma'at had evolved over since the first dynasty, almost 4,000 years ago. And it's a life way of ethics, of morality. It poses a determinant that a human being can attain to the perfectibility of morality. And all this accompanies a later evolving ethics for Osiris. We're using Greek names here. Osiris, who becomes, Lord and Judge in the world of the dead. So, having good conduct and so forth. Ma'at is the first principle that gives value to all values. The whole philosophy and conception of Ma'at figures in the government. It figures in the sociability. It is a transcendent spirituality. It gives intelligence. It definitely is a structural intelligence. And it definitely evolved all the way up until the time that the Romans took over the government and actually outlawed Ma'at. And that, unfortunately, one part that didn't get incorporated into the following Europeanized ideologies, Christianity and Islam, and so forth. So, very importantly, is this concept of Ma'at, just giving it in brief here. And then to speak of my display here, up here, these are all my illustrations, and this first one here is Ma'at in full feathered form. She is usually portrayed with one feather on her head in that way. And down here I have something that is replicating a Native American woman with one feather in her hair. And this style was far more prominent here in America, Turline's America, 100 years ago and so forth. You would see many instances, photographs or paintings of a Native American woman wearing one feather. And this is to say that Egypt has been here in Turtle Island in Native America for thousands of years. And much of Native America has expressed that. If there's any two cultures that in this world, the Native American and Egypt, they look the most alike of anything else. Egypt seems to have its own genesis, and Native America has partaken of that, and so forth. And then next to this next illustration, this is in the shape of an Egyptian fan, and in it there is a feather and the lady in the feather. Both the fan and the feather in the Egyptian language and in its hieroglyph are shoot, and all this has to do with the air, the movement of air. Shu is air itself. So here I figured the lady in the feather. So then it expands in terms of the blower. So all that air, which is also in when she is fully arrayed with all of these feathers. Now the feather moves through everything in Egypt as it does in Native America. There's even a portrayal of Geb, we would call it the earth god, totally covered in feathers. So the ideal person who lives the way of Ma'at becomes Geru Ma. That is the ideal person, or the person of feather. The well-feathered person, Geru Ma, would be that. And here on the other side, as I showed last week, this is the eye of Ma. This eye of Ma is also the eye of Ra, but this one that I've made is the rescued eye. I've rescued it to keep it from getting dim. And Ma is also considered the daughter of Ra. Ra is figured as the sun god, put it that way. And in the center here I have another illustration, and her name is Sheshata. Sheshata, she is called the goddess of records, the lady of enumeration. She's the librarian of the libraries. She's all about literature. She's all about records. She's all about all that goes into the architecture in Egypt. She's quite phenomenal in all that she's responsible for. And she is also the daughter of Ra. And that's what she would be writing there. She would be writing, that I wish to become the beloved daughter of Ra. And her symbol over her head figures as a seven-pointed star there. And I've given her a plume that she's writing with, as she is also figured with all her excellence as also Ma'at. If I continue, down here on my display, Egypt is Africa. It's an African nation. Mostly during the last 19th century and like that, Europeans kind of tried to, bleach that out. And Martin Burnell with Black Athena, has recolored Africa back into the color of Africa. And so I definitely want to bring that forward. First, this piece that I've made. This is actually an African passport mask, and I have fixed it up here to look this way. The funerary mask of Tutankhamun is figured that way, as a black face with white eyeliner. And there are many other figures, statues and paintings that figure this way. It's very particular, the coloration of this kind of art as to what is governing it, because it's not necessarily racial, but it does mean something going back to Osiris, the first god, king, god, like that, who is definitely figured as a black pharaoh. So we have many, many instances in that way. So this is a way that I'm wanting to bring forward the African in that. And here, to carry that over right here, this piece, the Dogon, who are of North Africans of Northwest Africa, basically, had originated in the Nile Valley, and that they had wanted to escape the expanse of Islam, and so they moved farther away over there. And they seem to be, from my acquaintance with the Dogon over several years, to be the most similar to the ancient Egyptian culture. And in language, there's much like you were looking at maybe pre-dynastic native Egyptians, and this carving comes from there, looks quite old, and this is a bird shape with a human type of head, and it would certainly be the Ba. And that is also a way to suggest that these ideals, like the Ba, are found through all African nations. And while I'm on that subject of Egypt, like that, here in this country, the people called Yaquis, whose actual Egyptian name is the Yohemi. The Yohemi are the old or the venerated people. And their culture certainly is native Egyptian. And in this way of Native America, we say Chankuluta, the good red road. In Yaqui is Tu'i Vuota Waiya, meaning follow the good road. So these are much in kind there. So that's a way of definitely bringing in the Yaqui relevance to this, that we have spent many years with Yaquis and Padrinos in a Yaqui family. Just on the other side of that, I've made, this is Shu'ut, and this would be the symbol and the hieroglyphic symbol of the feather of Ma'at. And that's that I've reproduced there. And above there's an ancient head that I've collected from somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean that looks like a woman wearing a headdress of feathers, somewhat as you might see in the old Native America. And down in front here, this is an old Egyptian oil lamp that is feathered, sprouting a feather. Now, next I'm going to read a poem by Mary Oliver, and because this poem has to do with death and what I've already mentioned of Egypt's concern about death, everything in Egypt is personified. So you see the sun is personified, Ra. The air is personified, Shu. The earth is personified, Get. And it goes on that way. The water is personified, Nu. It's all personified everywhere, in that they had ingeniously evolved a language and images, symbols, and so forth that would ring true. So true that a modern educated Egyptian could read what an Egyptian wrote 3,000 years ago, so reportedly. So in the term of death, and that will be the title of Mary Oliver's poem, we'll see. If we go down here to this exhibit, death is personified by the god of death named Seker. Seker. And Seker is also presides over Shakara, meaning the necropolis, the place of death. And he's figured here in both of these figures. If I go to the first one here, again, this is a Dogon figure for death. And on the other side is almost classic form of Seker with a hawk's head, and he usually has a crown. So that would be very typical. And then in the center, this is where Osiris, he merges with death. He descends into the world, the underworld, and he merges with that, and then he's called Kenti Amenti. So Kenti Amenti, and it's a whole process, stage by stage by stage by stage, that he's taken through or goes through as he's brought through to an eternal body of life and reincarnation. So in this the center figure, even though it's very small, however, it would have been included into the tomb furniture. This would be Osiris as Kenti and Menti. And there alongside of him is a small figure known by the Greek name of Anubis or Anpu in Egyptian, and who is a major figure conducting all of these funerary transformations. Does Mary Oliver. When death comes, and yet, when death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does towards silence. And each body a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom, taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Are you listening, death, warm in the rabbit's fur? So that certainly is a poem by a native Egyptian in the guise of Mary Oliver.